Trump speaks at 3 p.m. today, supposedly. And he most likely is going to be talking about crypto. This is actually pretty interesting. I don't think it's exactly what people think, but the US government is acquiring more crypto. I can show you here today what's happening. And again, Trump is most likely going to speak on it in just a few hours. But it seems like every day there's a back and forth about what Trump is saying in terms of trade relations, in terms of tariffs. So yesterday he crashed the market at the very end of the stock market being open. And then now the market's up this morning because of something else that was said. Let's explain what's happening, the back and forth seesaw of what Trump is saying. We'll also go through some new earnings. It's earnings season. Banks announced earnings yesterday. There are a couple more banks that announced earnings today, and they went very well. We'll talk about why this is good and why, even though Bitcoin isn't necessarily moving up right now at 111,000, why we're in a very good spot. Of course, there's going to be volatility, but we're in a very good spot right now. If you don't mind hitting subscribe so you can see future videos, I'd appreciate that. If you like this or feel like there's anything that you learned, you might want to hit subscribe. That way you get all the videos. YouTube will probably still show them to you even if you're not subscribed, but there are some videos that you missed then. If you want to trade crypto, check out BYDeFi underneath the video. There are two special bonuses going on right now. One, you can get up to $13,000 in bonuses for signing up on the platform. Two, that's for signing up and then starting to trade. And then two, there's a deposit bonus right now where you can get up to a $3,000 bonus. It's like a 30% deposit bonus up to $3,000. So check that out. I also saw some people were getting really pissed off because their exchanges did not handle the crash well last Friday, whether it was Binance having cryptos drop like 50% more than other exchanges, or whether it's, I heard KuCoin had someone that lost $300,000 and they weren't willing to do anything, and the person actually had the collateral in the account, so it wasn't even their fault. They offered him $50,000 in tradable funds that can't be withdrawn or something like that. Something crazy. So if you don't have a second account, or if you want to start trading in general, BYDeFi is a great place to start. Now, Bitcoin, sitting right around $111,000. You can see on TradingView, it actually looks like we're setting higher lows. I know that we wicked down lower, but we closed actually, back in line with a higher low. Not exactly what people want to see, but still, we're sitting right around $111,000. It could be worse. Yesterday, the traditional markets fell down right at the end of the market, like the last 30 minutes. However, today they're spiking up. We have the S&P 500 up like 1.1%. Yesterday, Trump said that he believes China is purposefully not buying our soybeans and causing difficulty for our soybean farmers in an economically hostile act. We're considering terminating business with China having to do with cooking oil and other elements of trade as retribution. As an example, we can easily produce cooking oil ourselves. We don't need to purchase it from China. Okay, so the market fell down, like, I don't know, 0.5% or something yesterday just based on that news. Then today, Treasury Secretary Bessent said he's optimistic about China and they're in communication with him. And the market's rallying back up. It's kind of crazy that the seesaw that's happening back and forth, back and forth. I think a lot of it's just noise. It's static. I would not really pay attention to it too much in your investment decisions. Of course, you can take advantage of it if there's some kind of large-scale crash like we saw on Friday that started because of something that Trump tweeted. I think everything, I think a large portion of this is just Trump throwing something out there, something really harsh, and then the other side gets kind of worried, comes to the table, they meet, and then they come up with some solution. So everything that he's saying, I think, is worse initially, and then it kind of just, they meet in the middle somewhere. So I wouldn't be too worried. I think most of it's just going to work itself out. The banks continue to have great earnings. We had BlackRock and a handful of other companies yesterday, JP Morgan, announcing earnings yesterday, and all of them beat across the board. Bank of America beat earnings per share by 10%. Revenues, they beat by $500 million. Morgan Stanley beat by 35% on EPS, and revenues beat by $1.5 billion. Again, this is a good bellwether for the economy. Usually if the banks are doing well, consumers are doing well, or the economy is doing well. in general. Powell also just straight up said that they're basically going to start printing money. They're going to stop shrinking the balance sheet. They're going to continue cutting rates. The money printer is getting warmed up, and this is definitely causing certain asset prices to go to all-time highs. Like look at this. Gold, $4,200 here today, up another 1.5%. Last 5 days it's up 5%. Last month it's up 14%. 6 months it's up 30%. Year to date 58%. 1 year about 58% as well. Just crazy how quick this has grown. The market cap is now about $30 trillion. This means it's gone up about 11 trillion this year. That is incredible. Like back in the last cycle, gold's entire market cap was about 10 to 12 trillion, and it's gone up about that this year. This is the equivalent of $400,000 being added to Bitcoin's market cap in a year. It's incredible. Now, some people aren't, celebrating this move. They think it's not an investment decision. It's a currency crisis warning. Central banks don't rush to gold because they think it will go up. They rush to gold because they know their currency is going down. If central banks are scared, you should be terrified. I think there's good reason to believe that there's going to be more devaluation of currency over the following years. I mean, Jerome Powell just signaled it. He just said it. They're basically going to continue to print. And a lot of these countries have to do so because they're at a deficit or they have high debt. A lot of central banks have already started cutting rates more aggressively than the Fed as well. But now the Fed's, turning to be a lot more dovish, which is good for investors on the surface, right? It makes asset prices go up. And if you have fixed expenses, this is good for your wealth. However, a 5% gain is not the same thing as a 5% inflation adjusted gain, right? I hope that makes sense. Just because asset prices are going up doesn't necessarily mean that people are winning. So you have to have good returns because everything's going to get more expensive in the future, whether it's high quality assets or whether it's just daily household, items that you need, right? Cough drops, groceries, stuff like that. So this is a good time to be investing because, we could be going into the next big expansion phase, especially with AI. We just got news that Amazon plans to cut as much as 15% of its HR staff, according to Fortune. I haven't read what they're saying about why this is happening, but their workforce in general hasn't been growing much recently. Let's actually pull it up on here. Qualtron website that I use has a nice feature here. You can see the end of year employee count. 1.61 million back in 2021, 1.54, 1.53, 1.56. So you might notice that they're always hiring, but that's because they have churn in the business. They have not really grown their employee count in 4 years. Well, I guess this shows the last 4 years. So 3 years of time. We haven't seen 2025 yet, but I would assume that a lot of automation is happening, and while they're still growing, right, while they're still gaining more revenue, a lot of it is coming from robots and efficiency increases and stuff like that. And with AI looming, with so many companies investing so much in AI, yes, they have to hire employees to work at some of these new like data centers and stuff, but overall, they might not need as much HR because robots don't need HR. So that is another sign that we're seeing AI take over. I really like Amazon right now as a company. I think it's going to be really profitable, really good investment, and not too risky in terms of single stock exposure either. Yesterday, the US announced that they seized $15 billion in Bitcoin. This is from the pig butchering scam that was going on. This is pretty sad, honestly. It was people in Cambodia that were forced to try to scam investors. Like they were forced with like romance scams, with email scams. Like these people that ran this pig butchering scam abducted people and forced them to try to scam investors. Apparently they acquired 127,000 Bitcoin. The leader is still out and about. He's still at large. He's 37 years old. But they were generating up to $30 million per day at the peak. That's just insane. $30 million. They had somewhere around, like I said, 127,000 Bitcoin. Now the majority of it should go to the US government. This is going to be a long process to get it like in the strategic reserve. We have the strategic reserve set up now to be able to put acquired Bitcoin, like seized Bitcoin in. And, honestly, I didn't think that we'd acquire much Bitcoin this way, but $15 billion isn't bad. Of course, the US could buy a lot more than that if they actually put money towards Bitcoin. Some of this might go to victims, but honestly, I'm not really sure how they're going to do that because there were so many different wallets and scams going on. It might be very difficult. And then the UK helped the US as well. This was led by the US, so I was doing some research. The majority of it should go to the US. And then should be put in the strategic reserve. $15 billion doesn't sound like a lot, but when you put it in terms of 127,000 Bitcoin, that's a significant amount. That's 0.6% of the entire supply of Bitcoin from the FBI going into the strategic reserve, hopefully, right? This will be a long process. I mean, this just got announced, so I'm sure that there's going to be a very lengthy court process. Could be years before it's like officially in the strategic reserve. Could be a half decade or a decade. Who knows? Like the Mt. Gox Bitcoin took a decade. So could take a long time, but in theory, this should be locked up in the meantime and should eventually be in the strategic reserve unless that goes away by the time the next president comes in. And Trump supposedly is going to speak today at 3 p.m. He's going to be in a press conference with the director of the FBI. I'm assuming this is going to be discussing this forfeiture, this seizure of Bitcoin. And I would not be surprised to hear him say that they're putting it in the strategic reserve eventually, right? Again, the timeline is difficult to know, but I would assume he's talking about Bitcoin and crypto because why else would you make a press conference the day after the FBI seized 127,000 Bitcoin? And why would you make it with the FBI, right? Like, hopefully this is good news from the president instead of like where you get those Friday dumps where he announces something and then the market tanks and then there's a lot of uncertainty and stuff like that. So hopefully this is good news and, or maybe not even good news. I think it'll be kind of a nothing burger for the people that know what's happening. But hopefully he talks about adding it to the strategic reserve and, the big win that they had, the big win that FBI had, taking this Bitcoin and taking out, the scammers or stopping this scam from happening. Because honestly, it was a very sad thing what was happening. So I'm glad that this is done with for now, hopefully. At the same time, we're seeing Bitcoin acquired by the ETFs, $102 million yesterday after, a big outflow day on Friday. But generally, it's been very positive in October. We saw inflows going into Ethereum as well, 236 million after a couple big outflow days on Thursday and Friday, or on Friday and Monday. So overall, there still are a lot of companies and ETFs acquiring Bitcoin. The price hasn't really gone up too much over the last couple of days. Again, I think it's a lot of sorting out what happened Friday. And maybe some liquidation still happening, some sideways chop before the next big move up. But when you see so many companies and countries and individuals turning to gold, like this is not happening. This move in gold is not happening from retail investors. This is from billionaires, central banks, large institutions buying up gold. I think the same thing will happen to Bitcoin, especially once quantitative tightening ends. Now, I could be wrong. There's always a possibility we could have hit the top. I don't think so. I don't think that's happening, though. When you look at the 4-year cycles, we typically top out in Q4 of the post-halving year. Yes. But at the same time, it's not like we have to top out just because that's what happens with the cycles. The institutions are driving the markets now. It's not retail investors. Institutions, whales, and exchanges, market manipulators are driving. Now, with the Fed lowering rates, with the economy looking great, with with the banks doing well, with other companies investing a lot of money into AI and making a lot of money, I don't see Bitcoin going down 70% if everything else is hitting all-time highs. I don't know. Let me know in the comment section below what you think. Of course, we're going to see some chop. I think there's a little bit more fear in the chop right now, just because we are typically where we top out. Like this is usually the best quarter and then we go down. So I think there's a little bit more fear than what we typically would see from like a 15% move in Bitcoin, to be clear. Let me know your thoughts though underneath the video. Again, if you want to trade crypto, check out BYDFi underneath. This is a great time to trade because there is a significant amount of volatility over the last week, which means you can get really good positions. Like we opened up an Ethereum long, a 5x long. We're up 47% on it in less than a week. It's pretty good. Let me know your thoughts on this though underneath the video. I really appreciate it. And if you want to sign up for the other exchanges too, have multiple exchanges. There's BTCC, BitUNix, WEEX, BLOFIN. All of them have really good sign up bonuses right now, so check them out. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next one.